What is the number one mistake that people make that prevents them from getting a house?
I'll give you the top three. Really love getting in debt when it comes to cars. Some of the families or individuals that I sit down and pre-approve have car payments where I'm like, that's almost a mortgage payment right there. What are you doing spending $4,000 a month on like 3 or 4 cars? Be smart. You don't have to go and get yourself that $75,000, $80,000 luxury vehicle. Think about the future.
Welcome to Life Chapters Podcast with Luis Vega.
Welcome back to another episode of Life Chapters. We have a special guest today that's a father of 2 beautiful girls, a husband, an entrepreneur of over 20 years of experience. So Alex Lombrozo, welcome.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, it's great. I'm excited for this conversation because every single time that we meet, we have very meaningful conversations that elaborate more and more and more and more. But can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently?
Yes. So, and I appreciate the comment of the valuable conversations that we have. I think that's one of the things that I always look for whenever I'm interacting or socializing with people. We have moments in life that we can always not just contribute value to somebody else, but extract value as well. And that's what social interaction, I think, is all about. So
Yeah.
a little bit about what I'm currently into. So I'm a real estate professional of 20 years, a real estate and mortgage broker. That pretty much is what fills up the majority of my professional time. However, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, kind of a serial entrepreneur. I've owned and operated multiple businesses. I've had, success. I've had failures. One of the main things, obviously, that I do is spend time with my family. I like to joke around lightheartedly. I'm a full-time dad and I'm a full-time professional because I think the only way to be a father nowadays is you got to go all in, you got to be full-time. And that's pretty much how I spend most of my time.
Okay. Well, and I heard a lot of different things going into what you do. Full-time family, right? Full-time family member. And you also had other experiences when it comes to business. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, on what the ups and downs were on your prior entrepreneurship journeys?
Definitely. So, and I think people will be able to get a lot of value out of this because at the end of the day, I think that, we're put on this earth again to add value and to be able to extract value, right? So I'll keep on probably coming back to that concept multiple times throughout our conversation. But at the end of the day, what I have, my experience has been, I've owned and operated multiple businesses. I got my real estate license in 2005. So I'm on my 21st year. It'll be 21 years in October of 2026, which is crazy because I'm 42 years old. You could comfortably say I've been doing this for half of my life now, which just thinking about that is bizarre. Throughout the process of, working full-time as a real estate professional as I was going to college, I got a little bit of the last 3 years or so of that real estate boom that we had in 2005, 6, 7, 8. Then the economy crashed. We had the great financial crisis.
Yeah.
There was a lot of adjustments that, as a real estate professional and as a single, younger person, I had to do. Went back to school. Kind of figured out what's going on. Should I continue on this path or not? And I did, and I stuck with it. But I always had this sort of insatiable, hunger, this internal hunger and urge to always be doing something new. I'm a little bit restless, if you will. And I love learning. I just have this, incredible curiosity about me and the way I go about my life. I love learning. And, so I always sort of kept my eyes and ears open about what else I could do. How else can I grow as a person, both professionally, socially, emotionally, just in every aspect of life. So throughout that process, basically, I started, when the market shifted in the real estate side, we started learning about, distressed properties, how to help homeowners that were underwater with their equity. And figure out, how we can either help them get out of the home through the process of a short sale, which is when you sell your home for less than what you owe the bank.
Yep.
And, there was a lot of people that just wanted to hold on to their property. So we decided to also learn how to help them get a loan modification, learn that entire process, set up an operation on how to be able to get a loan modification on your property if you wanted to hold on to it. And if you didn't, then that would lead into a short sale. So that was sort of the pivot that I did at the time. In 2009, I began dating my current wife.
Oh, nice.
And, we established a serious relationship. In 2013, we had our first girl. And in 2013, I also invested and became involved with another venture, which was really, really fun. And that was an exotic car company. So this exotic car company was basically a company where we owned a fleet of high performance exotic cars, and we would set up autocross tracks at like stadium parking lots or large parking lots. And so those autocross tracks are those tracks that you'll see with cones, and you race through them, right? So I became an owner, an investor in the company, and I became a driving instructor. So I was doing a little bit of everything. I was doing marketing, sales. I was a driving instructor. Customers would pay. They would buy 5, 10, 20 laps in like a Porsche GT3 or a Ferrari F430, Lamborghini. And they would get behind the wheel and drive the car. And so as the instructor, I'm there kind of coaching you, telling you, how to approach a certain corner, a line, when to accelerate, when to decelerate, what not to do. A lot of fun and crazy experiences throughout that, spin outs, hitting cones. So anyway, that was a really, really fun period of my life. It was a lot of work. Actually, it was really taking a lot of our weekends because we would set up those autocross tracks on the weekends. And so, we'd have to go set up, 5, 6 in the morning, put up all the we would do events in Orange County. We would do events in LA, in Arizona, and in Chula Vista in San Diego. So we were kind of all over the place. And then we kind of branched off and did a car rental through that as well. So we had a platform where you could rent the car for a day or however many days you wanted. And then there was an exotic car tour through the San Diego East County Mountains, where you could also basically participate in like a caravan, as an exotic car caravan. Yeah. So we would have 4 to 6 cars, and we would rotate every, 10 miles or so. And so you would get to drive every single car. And we'd have a lead car, like a pace car kind of, and then a car in the back. And so I would be in either the lead or the pace, or we'd switch off. That was a really, really fun experience. So we did that for a couple of years. And then ultimately it was taking me away, not just from real estate, but from my family. And after sort of like deciding I need to focus a little bit more on one or the other, I decided, let me really focus on real estate because, the market was starting to really pick up. So around 2015 or so, I sort of shifted back 100% full-time into real estate. Our first daughter had been born, and, it was that growth period. So that was that. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That sounds like real estate, distressed properties, and then exotic cars. Yeah. But everything that you said, I'm like, I want to be driving those fast cars.
It's such a great experience. But I will tell you, I'm sure we're going to touch a lot on the subject of like, financial planning, being financially responsible in life. And let me tell everybody out there that has that itch that they want to scratch of like, investing in a high performance car. It's an investment. It's a depreciating asset at the end of the day, and they're very costly to maintain. So I've always been a car guy growing up, as a boy naturally. And I grew up with cars. My dad used to love to restore cars and, had a nice car collection. It was this thing. He used to race cars back in the day in Guadalajara, Mexico. And so I grew up with that sort of ambiance. And I kind of got that scratch or that itch out of the way. I scratched that itch, if you will, throughout that experience, and kind of realized, this is kind of a pretty irresponsible way to throw away a lot of money owning these cars where you have like a $2,500 a month payment, or like nowadays, because of the cost of them and where rates are at, you're paying like $4,000, $5,000 a month for like a crazy $200,000 exotic car. Think twice about it before. That's why this company was great, because, just pay, drive the car, rent the car, and enjoy it. And then, pass the keys on to somebody else. Let it be somebody else's problem.
Okay. It seems like you did a lot of fun stuff, and you always were moving in accordance with the shifts of the market at its point. You're like, hey, I need to feed the family, feed myself, and let me try this venture. You had an itch and you scratched it, right? Yeah. But let me go back to 2005. Okay. That's when you got your license in real estate. What made you get into real estate at that point? How old were you then?
Yeah. So I was 20 years old when I got licensed. And what made me get into real estate is that, so I come from a real estate family. My dad has been in real estate for many years. And when my family came from Mexico to the United States, They had a successful electronics manufacturing company back in Mexico. And then, they got hit with the tough times, the economic time, and the peso really
Yeah.
devaluing and depreciating. And so they decided to move out here. They were fortunate enough to be able to invest in San Diego. And so they got into real estate ownership and they bought multifamily residential units.
Nice.
And so it was always something that I saw as an amazing investment vehicle to grow your wealth.
Okay.
So that always attracted me. I really enjoyed the sales aspect of, the job, the day-to-days of selling real estate. So that was one of the things. And I said, I see myself in sales. I see myself working in a line of work where I'm interacting with people, whether it's, advising them, consulting them, selling them a product, but I want to sell them something that they want to buy. Because at heart, I'm not the kind of person that wants to really pull somebody's arm or twist somebody's arm to get them to buy something. Like, I'm not a salesman at heart.
Yeah.
I'm just a social person. And so when I find value in something, I love sharing that with people. I love communicating that value. It could be investing in real estate. It could be nutrition, which I'm, very much into nowadays, health, whatever it is that I think will bring value, going back to that value add subject. And so I always saw real estate as a value add subject in life for anybody from all kind of scales or spectrums in the economic scale of life. So that was pretty much what geared me towards that.
Man, that is cool, because a lot of the times people get into a specific industry just because they heard it from friends or their environment. You experienced it from the home.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Your parents came to this country and they invested in real estate, but not only just, single homes, but actually put in money in multifamilies.
Yeah.
Now, for people out there maybe wanting to get into real estate, maybe purchasing a house and investing, what are the pros and cons of maybe getting a single home versus like a multifamily property?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on what your long-term goal is. Let's say if you're buying because you have a family, okay, if you buy multifamily, there's always, there's a really sort of cool hack, okay? Like if you're single or you don't mind kind of sharing a space with somebody, investing in a duplex is a great idea. Biggest obstacle, I think right now, particularly in San Diego, is obviously the accessibility price-wise. However, there's a really awesome tool with financing where you can purchase a duplex or anything that's 4 units or less, which is still considered residential, non-commercial multifamily. You could basically qualify for that mortgage through the prospective rental income that you will be receiving by renting out the other units, whether it's a 2-unit or a 4-unit, whatever it may be. So that's an awesome hack and a great tool to be able to kind of springboard into your first real estate investment. But that might not be the right path for somebody who has a family, right? Maybe you have little kids and so you need your own private space. You don't want to be dealing with tenants. But it's a fantastic way to get into real estate and have that, qualify for something that you may not otherwise qualify for just with your regular day job income, because you're getting that supplemental income of that rental of the units.
That is very interesting. And that I've heard of that type of loan that you can do that. Is there a specific type of loan that people can look into, or is just any loan that can do that?
Yeah, any loan. So whether it's a conventional mortgage or a VA mortgage for veterans, you can use both of those loan programs to be able to qualify for a property using the prospective rental income.
Yeah, we got to talk. We got to talk, because I have my VA loan that I have to use again.
Yes.
And I'm telling myself that I have to, because that's how I'm creating generational wealth, by investing my money into real estate for longevity, right? And I'm doing it through multifamilies. And now that you mentioned that I can use the income from the other 3 properties, for example, that's even better. There's also another thing that you said, that you were in 2005 and you were like this boom of the real estate market at that point. But then, the market crash hit around 2008, 2009, and maybe took a couple more years to recover. Now, what financial planning did you make, or did you wish you made in your first 3 years as a business owner in real estate?
That's a great question. And let's skip to the second question.
Okay, let's do it.
What financial planning moves would I wish that I would have made? I was young. I was making good money. And at the end of the day, the reality is that I pretty much spent most of my money. I got in debt, I spent most of my money. So there's a lot of things that I would completely redo with everything that I know now. And, these mistakes, fortunately and unfortunately, because it depends on your perspective on making mistakes in life, right?
Correct.
I think making mistakes in life is an essential part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Living it or being a business person, entrepreneur, like you're gonna make mistakes. You know what I mean? So you need to immediately like adjust your expectations about yourself and life, knowing that you're going to make mistakes. And so when you make that adjustment, you know that when you make a mistake, that something good can come out of it, right? And you're expecting it. It's not catching you completely off guard.
Yeah.
So you always need to have that, margin of error. That's why in investing, there's that term risk versus reward.
Yep.
Right? You don't get a reward when it comes to investing unless you assume a certain amount of risk. So measuring that risk is the most important part. But, by definition, that risk represents failure.
Yep.
So the main thing is I wish I would have put away a lot more money. I wish I would have compiled, a real estate portfolio when I was younger. The reason why I didn't is I was young. When you're young and you're making money, you kind of think, great, like this is going to continue forever. Like I made the right choice. This is not going to stop. And unfortunately, then you go through these economic cycles and it happens, every 4 to 6 years, we go through these economic cycles of, there's growth. And then there's sort of that like kind of blow off, top where you get to that abundance era. And then all of a sudden, like they pull the rug from under the economy. And there's a hard reset that takes place. And that it's going to happen in every industry pretty much. And it's going to happen to anybody who gets into business. So I really wish I would have put away more money. I wish I would have had the vision of, understanding those economic cycles. Financial education and understanding market cycles is such an important thing. You don't have to understand money 100%, but market cycles, I think if anybody takes anything away from the financial education part, understanding market cycles is probably the biggest thing that I would, recommend people to study, because there's a lot of history to track market cycles and it's based on human behavior, the flow of money into the economy. And then, they turn on the vacuum and then they pull money out of the economy, which is what we've been living for the last, almost 4 years post-COVID era. They turn on the vacuum cleaner and raise rates and they suck the money out of the economy, right? But before that, they pumped a record amount, historical amount of money. But going back to your question, there's a million things I could have done differently. And I still make mistakes nowadays. It is what it is.
And I like that you acknowledge every stage of your life, the wins. You're like, this is going to last forever. But just like the markets, there's always that reset, that check. You're like, hey, it's not going to be forever. Start planning. So when the market does crash or anything happens to you, you're prepared.
100%.
I like that. Now, for those people that want to buy a property, they don't know what the next steps are. Is there a way that they can start planning, pairing? What are the steps that they should do?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Basically, the very first thing that you should do is get educated a little bit on the process, just so that you can know what to expect. Thankfully nowadays we have access to so much free information, so you can easily look up just kind of the main basic steps of, what it takes to purchase a home. And then after that, the next step is speak to a professional. Speak to somebody that, has earned your trust. Trust is so important, not just in relationships, socially, but business-wise. And make sure that that person helps you plan. You don't want to wait till the very last moment. I get clients reaching out to me all the time saying, hey, Alex, I'm ready to buy a home. Let's go. I have a 3-month period, and they're first-time home buyers, so they're not familiar with the process. And then when you sit down, try to get the pre-approval done, go over their finances, income, their debts, credits, structure things for them. They don't qualify. They're not prepared because they didn't educate themselves or speak to somebody months in advance, to help them sort of like take the proper steps to prepare. Preparation is key. Education, preparation. So don't wait till the moment that you think you're ready. Actually, you want to, if you think you're going to be ready in a year, you know what? Talk to somebody, start planning. There's a million professionals out there that will be able to set that time to really, really help you put together like a tailor-made approach for your particular situation. Everybody has a different, unique situation when it comes to their employment, their finances, their spending, their debts, their liabilities. So you want to definitely plan ahead of time. I would recommend 6 months. I think 6 months is a good number to plan ahead of time. And if you think you're going to be ready 6 months from now, talk to somebody now so that you don't make any mistakes in the buildup of that 6 months that are passing. And then, you think you're ready and all of a sudden you've got some credit issues here that aren't allowing you to qualify for that home that you're looking for. So.
Okay. Now that mistake that you mentioned, it led me to think, is there a common mistake that I'll say families that are trying to purchase a home make? For example, let's just say they sit down with you and they'll be ready in 6 months per all the analysis that you did and the preparation. You're like, hey, family, in 6 months, you guys will be ready. That 6 month comes. What is the number one mistake that people make that prevents them from getting a house?
I'll give you the top 3 because I don't know if I can quantify the most frequent one, but I can tell you the top 3. So number 1, they'll get in debt throughout that time, right? So you sit down, you go over the numbers, okay? And then based on those numbers, you project where they need to be at to qualify for what they, for what they think they're going to want to purchase, price range, et cetera. And then after you sit down and go over all the numbers, 6 months pass or, whatever time passes, and they end up getting in debt. All right. They'll finance a new car, new truck. They'll get in just regular consumer credit card debt or, vacations, whatever it is. But I guess that is the number one mistake, not respecting those numbers, not respecting the game plan, which is the whole reason why you sat down with a professional to discuss and put together this whole plan of attack. If you don't follow the rules of that plan of attack, then you're going to put yourself in jeopardy of not qualifying when you're ready to go. And that's really important. I see so many, one of the things that I see nowadays is people really love getting in debt when it comes to cars. Some of the families or individuals that I sit down and pre-approve have car payments where I'm like, that's almost a mortgage payment right there. What are you doing spending $4,000 a month on like 3 or 4 cars?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, be smart. You don't have to go and get yourself that $75,000, $80,000 luxury vehicle. Think about the future. It's a very common mistake. The car situation is interesting.
And it's crazy that you mentioned the car situation because you were in the exotic car industry. And then at that point, the payments were a lot less, maybe like 50% less than what they are today.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was 18, getting a brand new car and it was like $300 a month.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's pretty good. Now, if I should go to try to get the same car, it's like 3 or 4 times more than that. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm still looking for one that's 300.
Absolutely.
That devaluation of cars, right? That happens all the time. But I want to touch on something very key that you mentioned, that even though you set up a plan of attack, a plan to get a house, the dream, the American dream for many people, but it's still a lot of the times people don't follow it.
Yes.
I do a lot of financial planning for families. And just because we do the financial plan, it doesn't mean that everything's going to be the way that we're speaking about it if the plan is not followed the way that it was structured. That happens. It happens all the time. And cars is one thing that they're changing cars every 2-3 years. They're trying to get the new truck, the new, nice Audis and everything. But that is, that's we still got to deal with families.
We're all victims of this consumer economy, right? We're being overstimulated and hit every moment of our lives on our phones when we're driving. Anytime you turn on a screen with these ads and these crazy marketing campaigns. So yeah, you got to have some restraint and some discipline for sure.
Yeah. And going to that discipline, I know you've been in business for going on almost 21 years. You got married, you got kids, you got 2 daughters now. Yeah. How has being in business and the up and downs of the market shifts, what did you have to establish in business and then at home to make that whole situation work for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I think I've always really been in seek of that work family balanced life. I actually grew up in a home where we didn't really have that balance. My dad was a bit of a workaholic, and he would travel a lot for work in his younger days. So, a lot of times I wouldn't see him or hang out with him. And then, my mom passed when I was very, very young. So I didn't have that aspect of it. So, you know what? To me, the most important thing 100% in life is family and me being able to spend time with my daughter. So I've gone out of my way at this point to set up a home office. And so I've been basically working from my home office for the last 5 years, and I know that COVID was sort of a big kind of like springboard into working from home. But the truth is that once I did start working from home, I realized I'm around, I'm here. And it can get a little annoying sometimes, and frustrating having the kids screaming and, knowing that they can just walk right into your office and completely interrupt your flow and your whole vibe and mojo you have going on when it comes to work. But I love it. I love that they're seeing me work. There's a drawback or a downside to that, which is that, I do feel like sometimes my daughters might feel like dad's always working. He doesn't pay attention to us, et cetera, et cetera. But the other side of that coin is dad's always at the office. He's never here. And so if I'm going into the office, 9 to 5 or in real estate, okay, it's more like 9 to 8 or 9 to 9. It's crazy because, you have to be self-productive and motivate yourself to do things while your clients are working. And then for those clients that have their 9 to 5 jobs, they get out in the evening and they want to meet, they want to talk, they want to see properties. So, you're mostly fully booked and your schedule's all over the place. So for me, I would rather take that sort of like downside of being home, but not really be, having to tell my kids, hey, I'm on a call, I can't pay attention to you right now. I can't give you that time as opposed to just them not seeing me.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll motivate them a little bit, to realize, hey, you got to grind. You got to look at dad and look at mom. Mom's always working too. Mom works from home too. So we each have our own home offices. I'm upstairs. She's downstairs. We'll try to create that little bit of separation just so that we can each focus. She has her space. I have my space. And we've worked together, going on 13 years now, roughly 12, 13 years of working together and kind of like doing everything that we do it together. So that's another way that we kind of bring that balance to our work life and our family life is everything that we do it together. So we've really cemented and established that team building mentality at home. And I love that our daughters get to see that. And I know right now that might not register for them in the way that we as mature adults, think it will. But they're going to look back and it's going to be, I think, a very valuable experience for them to see mom and dad working together. And sometimes we're struggling and we're arguing and we're fighting and there's differences of opinions. You know what I mean? But we're problem solving together, which is probably I think that's one of the most important skills in life is knowing how to problem solve.
I like that you guys are a team. You guys been working together for 13 years, creating that separation. Because, working in the same office, there's more arguments that can happen. But having that separation, it's awesome. But I do like that your daughters are seeing both of you at home working, even though you guys are a very busy couple. Since I met you, you guys are always together. And if you guys are not together, it's because someone else has something else going on that is business related or family related, because you guys do value family first, which is something very important, very key that a lot of entrepreneurs maybe lack.
Totally.
And that drives the negative aspect of being in business, that we focus on making the money, growing our business, as much as possible. But then it could be a lonely road. You guys are a very good example of, husband, wife, kids in business, because believe it or not, kids are still in business because they're seeing you on the day-to-day. When you guys sit together, you guys are talking some business, some family, growing in business.
They're absorbing all of this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it reminded me of you growing in business with your family as well, investing. So it just comes generational.
Totally.
That's how you start creating generational wealth, by passing knowledge from one to the other and just getting a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give you another example right now, my wife and I started a company called My Brain Buddies, which we started last year. It's been about 8-9 months now. The idea stemmed almost 2 years ago. And so she's off in Washington, D.C. today as we record this. advocating for the Tourette Syndrome Association of America. That I might have butchered the actual name of the organization, but basically it's one of the largest associations that represents, children with Tourette syndrome and individuals, adults as well, with Tourette syndrome. So she's out in Capitol Hill today meeting with California representatives from Congress, from Senate, and they're advocating for funding and resources to help provide, additional resources and help build a really, really strong community in California for these children and adults that have neurodivergent conditions. So anyway, My Brain Buddies is a great example of us involving our two daughters in something that is not just purposeful, but it's also business oriented, right? So they're actually, they helped us. What we're doing is we're going to market with 100% non-toxic kids plushie toy, right? Because 99% of all the plushie toys that are out there right now, manufactured massively, are toxic. They're full of, materials that have plastics, microplastics, right? Because of the polyesters. Polyester is, a plastic, filled material, and it's also highly flammable. So on top of that, they have to be sprayed with flame retardants, which are also toxic. And so anyway, long story short, these kids use these plushie toys that are mass manufactured on an industrial level with these microplastics and flame retardants. And, it takes them 9 years to develop an immune system, and then they're putting them in their mouth, they're rubbing them in their face. So long story short, our daughters have been involved in the design process of this plushie toy. And we're also integrating a storybook that talks about each neurodivergent condition, right? Tourette syndrome, ADHD, autism. And so our daughters are actually going to be the authors of those books. So they're going to be, So that's a lot of fun. And so this is just another way to exemplify how you can, as a family, kind of bring work home, teach your kids how to participate in the work family life. And, I think it'll be a really, really important lesson for them moving forward.
That's a good example that you guys have been making for your two daughters, to the point now that you are bringing them into the business. Because when can you take your kids to work? It's very rare, right? Now you bring them a business. Now you have them, design and co-author and doing all these things for the Brain Buddies, which is great. And I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm going to bring Angela. It's just a little teaser.
I couldn't help myself.
No, and I like that because it's a good way to bring the family together and how everyone is focused in doing their part. Now, for those people in real estate for those people that want to be in real estate, get their license, what would you recommend their first step be? And what kind of character, if they want to work for you, for example, what would you looking for?
So number one, if you want to be a successful real estate professional, the number one thing that you need to understand is you're an entrepreneur. Okay. Yes, there's companies out there, there's brokerages out there that will offer you the sun and the moon and a bunch of resources, etc. But at the end of the day, you own your own time. And so you need to be able to self-motivate yourself. You need to be able to understand that there's two ways that you can inject capital, right? Two forms of capital, right? You've got the social capital, okay, and then the time, and then the actual monetary capital to invest in your branding, in your marketing, advertising, all those things. So at the end of the day, you are going to business with yourself and, you're running your own business. I would warn people that, sort of get really this illusion that you're going to get rich quick with real estate, like with any business, unless you're super lucky. And look, there's people out there that have been, but let's just be real. On average, okay, like with any business, you have to build it up. It takes time. It takes dedication. It takes countless hours and hours. So if you're looking to get into real estate just to make, a quick several thousand, $20,000, $30,000 a month, because, that's what you hear on YouTube. That's what you hear people discuss. You're going to get rich if you're in real estate because, let's say the average property price in San Diego is close to $1 million and, you're making a $20,000 to $1,000 commission on that. So no problem. I can sell one house a month. and I'm great. You know what? It's a lot more difficult than that. Real estate has one of the highest turnover rates in any industry. So I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 85 to 90% of the people that actually pass their California real estate exam don't renew their license 4 years later because they just don't make it. So now that I've gotten the negative aspects out of the way, okay, not to discourage anybody, but it is a business that I think is, built for a certain kind of individual. What do we talk about? We talked about being self-motivated. Okay. Structure is really important in the business. And this is something that, full confession, I sort of suffer from a little bit, the structure. I'm a bit of a creative mind. I've got ADHD, I'm very high strung and hyperactive. And I like doing a million things at the same time. And I pride myself in being able to multitask, but sometimes that hinders my ability to really zero in and structure my day properly. I've had to learn throughout the years. And now that I have, other businesses, family, it definitely gets in the way. But if you can really, really work on building those skills, right? Motivating yourself, structuring your time, you can do fantastic in real estate.
I like because you mentioned key points that motivation, structure. If you're wanting to build any type of business, it takes time. And a lot of the times we are meant to suffer a little bit, to have that mind shift, because nowadays everything can happen like pretty quick.
Yep.
And if nothing happens pretty quick, we're like, oh, that doesn't work. But anything in business takes months, takes years. And on average, businesses are taking 10 years before they're actually successful in other people's eyes. Now, what kind of phase are you in business right now?
What phase am I right now? So right now we're definitely in a growth phase. Why do I think that we're in a growth phase? Number one, obviously we're building one business from scratch. It's a completely different industry than the one that, I have experience in. So there's a lot of learning that takes place there. On the real estate side, the reason why I mentioned growth is not so much because of, my skill set or my experience. Obviously I have a wealth of experience in that aspect, but markets wise, economy wise, we kind of are in the, the reset button was hit a few years ago. Most of the conversations that I'm having right now with clients or potential clients are more of the planning. We're in that planning phase. They really have a lot of questions about where this market is headed towards. It's funny because I think I may have mentioned this to you earlier, but the other day I was speaking to a potential seller, wants to, list their property. And she tells me, I've been working with her for 6 months. And so she tells me, Alex, my friend told me that when Trump gets out of office, that real estate values are going to skyrocket. So I should wait to sell my property until after Trump gets out of office. I'm like, well, he's got another 3 years to go, number one. Number two, what does your friend do for a living? Like, is she a multi-mega millionaire? You know what I mean? Like, she must have a secret sauce that none of us do. But the reality is that, like you said, everything in life, when it comes to business and relationships, trust is, stone by stone, brick by brick. It's baby steps. You have to, you have to let time pass. And so in real estate, it's the same thing. You really want to let, your investment mature in order for you to see that growth. Real estate is actually a lagging asset class. It's usually one of the, sort of like you go down the list and, stock market's usually pretty reactive, right? Up, down, up, down. There could be a huge crash one day, a huge boom, or a pump one day, but real estate will lag after that. So right now, that growth phase is what's taking place. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so my advice to people that are considering transacting in real estate right now, whether they're looking to buy or to sell, refinance, is turn off the news. Turn off the news. Don't listen to everything that you hear. Take everything with a grain of salt if you are going to, seek outside opinions, and understand that even the most knowledgeable economists right now that are on CNBC and on TV, these guys are so divided right now on where things are at and where the real estate market is headed. Is it going to crash? You know what? I can tell you this from experience. I still have clients today that are kicking themselves in the butt for not buying a property 4, 5, 6 years ago because they thought that the bubble was going to burst and that values were going to drop drastically. And that was going to be their opportunity to get into a property. And they're pretty upset right now with that decision. So the best time to transact is when you're ready. And the best way to find out if you're ready is by sitting down and analyzing the situation, whether it's by yourself or through my advice, right, with a professional, and really, again, putting together a roadmap. So that's my advice for sure.
You hit on some points that I thought they were just happening with my clients, that they take advice from their uncle, their someone in their close circle, that they don't have the experience or they're not even licensed. And then we tend to listen to them the most versus the professional that has been doing it for years and is licensed to conduct that type of business or transaction. Do your research. That's what I tell people. Do your research. Talk to someone that is licensed. And if it makes sense, just like you said, if it makes sense and if you're ready, buy real estate. Start planning, financial plan. Do anything that you're trying to do as long as it makes sense number-wise, because the industry, the market, none of those things, you're never going to time it perfectly.
Absolutely. It's like that famous saying, right? Time in the market is more effective than timing the market.
Yes.
So I agree 100% with that. Yeah, people really, they overthink things. And look, it may not be the right time. I mean, there's situations where I sit down with clients and I say, you should not buy a house right now. You should not be investing in real estate right now.
Mm-hmm.
You should cut your expenses and you should put some more savings together. Or if you're an entrepreneur, for example, and you're self-employed, if you spend this money right now, is that going to put your business at risk of potentially failing or not having the growth potential, that it could have to invest that money in your business? And that's why I see myself as a great resource to people just in having these conversations, right? Because I have experience. I have experience on the business side, and I have, 21 almost years of experience on the real estate side, just on the transactional side. And I've seen those, equity growth curves and the falls and et cetera. So it's really important to bring that perspective to the table, because I can be way more sincere. And look, sometimes I tell people something they don't want to hear and they get upset, and they might say, let me go talk to somebody else. And that other professional might, be coming from that, hard sales training background. And this is something I don't like about my particular industry, is that you get this kind of shark sales mentality, right? They label us as like glorified car salesmen. I hate that approach with people, because you're dealing with one of the biggest investments that people will be making. And this is, they could be make or break for their success in the future, for their family. I've seen it happen. So I'm very sensitive to that. I've seen it happen before. That was actually kind of my introduction to the industry, right? 3 years of like this crazy boom where deals were falling in your lap and you were selling 2-3 properties to one client. And then you saw them lose all of those properties. And, these people are calling you saying, Alex, what do we do? How can we avoid this situation? Unfortunately, you dig a hole so deep for yourself that you can't get out of it. And all you have to do is just kind of turn the page and recover. But it's super important. Yeah. I mean, you really have to educate yourself on the surface, but don't be a keyboard warrior. Don't think you know it all. And don't think that, your neighbor or your uncle or cousin know it all. Sit down and just be open to having these conversations. A lot of people are very closed-minded, and they just aren't open to having a conversation with a licensed and a seasoned professional, such as yourself or such as myself. And they really undervalue the perspective that they can bring to the table just from it could be a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah. And you touch home when you mentioned people not having the right education, the right knowledge, or the right guidance, because my parents went through that. They bought their first home, brand new. They invested their money. They're like, man, we are owners. But then the market crash happened and their whole structure was not set up properly, which meant they couldn't afford it anymore because the interest kept on going. Their mortgage kept on going higher and higher and higher to the point that they had to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And then it takes time to recover from a bankruptcy. And there's a bunch of stuff that happened, and they could have avoided that if they just talked to one person. They actually listened. So talk to someone. Now, I have one last question.
Okay.
Actually, two. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you believe might provide value to the people that are listening?
I think we talked about it. You didn't ask me directly, but something that comes to mind immediately is community, building community and getting involved with community and having that safety net, knowing that you can actually rely and fall back on your community. So we've been going through this kind of like phase these last few years in life where everything got so fragmented and people got so antisocial, right? Because it was the pandemic and we had to stay at home, or, because of social media, which is kind of really anti-social media, right?
Yeah.
People, including kids, and we're seeing this struggle with our, own children, they can be prone to becoming antisocial face to face and having these really meaningful conversations, which brings a ton of real energy, right? It's invisible, but there's energy that is flowing through this room between you and me right now. And even from the listeners, people watching and listening to this, they're going to get a certain vibe and energy from it. And that's really important. So one of the things that, I'm really excited about and focused on is seeing how San Diego as a community is growing, is coming together. I'm getting a lot more involved. And that's how you and I met, going through these networking events where we just sit down and talk about what we do for a living and talk about ourselves and our, experiences in life. It's something that I'm really excited about because even I became a bit antisocial in the last few years. You know what I mean? And so it almost, it became to the point where, I kind of just kind of wrinkled up into my own, little shell and got really comfortable. And now it's helping me grow again. It's this phase. That's why when you mentioned what phase am I at in business, but I'll apply that to my personal life as well. I'm really excited to be living through this phase now at 42 years old of growth through community and through outreach and through building relationships again. Whereas, that kind of got taken away from us a little bit. And that's something I'm really looking forward to continuing to do.
Man, you're talking about community, how we met, networking. I was very introvert in that bubble. I was scared of going to networking events and meeting people. But having the pleasure to meet you, your lovely wife, and all these other people that we interact, just like we just got back from that this morning, it just fulfills my soul every single time I hang around those people because we are givers.
Yeah.
We give our time, our knowledge. We like to listen to every single person, and we want to hear their up and downs and give feedback if we can. Hey, try this, try that. We always try to motivate people. So that's why we have to align with individuals that are like-minded, that they know where they're going so we can support them. Because most of the time, others, when you share what you're trying to achieve, they're always trying to give you the negative aspect of it of, oh, don't do that. You don't have the capacity to achieve that. This might happen. And you stop. So having a good community of people that are pushing you and supporting you is the best thing that you can have and the best thing that you could do as well.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It's very inspiring to do that.
Yeah. And when you put yourself in that position where you get to listen to other people's stories, you realize that a lot of the insecurities that we hold, right, the things that are keeping us back, holding us back from doing anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Those insecurities are common amongst our peers, amongst our community members, our family members, our friends. And seeing that they were able to overcome those insecurities is truly inspiring, because at the end of the day, again, though everybody has a unique situation, everybody has circumstances that are completely different from yours. My life is different from yours. My challenges are different from yours. We might have common challenges, but at the end of the day, we have a lot of different ways to get to the same route. And hearing people's stories about how they got to where they're at, or even just the journey, if they're not there yet, but the freaking fact that they're out there and they're doing it, they're grinding and they're putting themselves out there, man, that it's been a bit of a revival for us. We've gone through a pretty difficult, last 3 years. I haven't even, don't even know. Maybe we'll have to do another podcast. Maybe you'll become my therapist. But we've gone through the last 4 or 5 years have been incredible swings from like high to lows. Like they've just been like, the extremes have been something that have, been difficult to deal with. We've incurred some incredible successes, but also some incredible failures. At the end of the day, one of the things that has really, really inspired me is getting to know all these people that are just out there, man, trying to live their lives and trying to make it. And you know what? Just get out there and, come to our networking events, to any networking event that you can be a part of, and talk to people. Talk to people and listen, hear their stories, and build your own.
And that is awesome. Okay. Last question is from our previous guest.
Okay.
And have anything to do with it.
Okay.
So our last guest wrote, if you could do a pro bono work for someone, an institution, or an organization for one entire year, who would that be? Why? And how would you pick them?
Wow.
I know it's a loaded question.
So my first answer, I'm actually gonna give this one. I know that my wife will take this one. So I'll move on to answer B. I've dove in deep into the rabbit hole in the last 5, 6, 7 years of nutrition and health.
Okay.
And, it's just my mind has been blown with, the food that we have been eating, the stuff that's, on the grocery store aisles and counters, and what those foods have, how they've harmed us on a physical level, physiological level, neurological level, and it's causing all kinds of problems. So I would love to get involved with something like, what's the name of the movement right now? The Make America Healthy Again.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a really cool movement. You know what I mean? Because, for example, there's food in the U.S. that has ingredients that are illegal in almost every other country. How? I don't understand it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's one way to really like make a change in younger people. We try to do that at home. And so helping, I'm nowhere near being like a certified nutritionist or anything like that. But that's a subject that I'm really into. I really take care of what I eat, how I eat, and the timings of how I eat. So I would love to get involved with that because at the end of the day, we are what we eat. And so I think that's a key way to help people avoid potential depression, health issues, loss of motivation, loss of sleep, insomnia. I've suffered with insomnia for many years. Many years. So that's one of the struggles that I have that I'm still fighting with. I've, been able to sort of hunker down a little bit and, improve on that situation. But I think that would be it. Maybe that's a weird answer. I don't know.
No, that's a really good answer because
I think health is so important, man.
It is very
because food and nutrition stems mental healthness or mental wellness, mental health, and we have a mental wellness crisis in the world right now. So
that would be a great project. Because health is very important. We need our health to achieve anything.
Absolutely.
Right? If we want to be alive, we got to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right? So I just want to thank you, Alex, for being part and being an amazing guest, sharing a lot of your information of 21 years of experience with all the listeners, with myself as well, because I learned a lot from this conversation. And I know I'm going to bring you back.
Appreciate that.
Because there's a lot more that we can go into, but we gotta keep the teasing very, very gentle. Sure. And I just want to give everybody else, the listeners, a thanks for sticking with us. And if you found this story, this information that Alex shared with you guys today, just share it and pass it down to someone else that is either planning to get a home or wanting to become a realtor. See you next chapter.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Luis. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being part of this project to share people's journey. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next chapter.